Let's talk more about money back first on sale, and I'm going to go through what I call order of life on a sale. Order of life on sale. Now I'll tell you before I go through that, when we're looking at a property and making a decision to purchase a property, I only purchase properties that I know that we can hold very long term. So looking at a deal, I look at it and go 30 to 40 years from now, is this still something that I would want to own? Because our mindset is to buy great property, pay down the mortgages, and pay off the mortgages, and just enjoy the cash flow from the property that we're purchasing. There are two reasons why we are going to sell a property if we decide to do so. One is if I can touch that property and make it worth more than it's going to be worth again in the next 10 years, because I do something to it, we'll go test the market then to see if we can realize an upside. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. The second reason we'd sell a property is if it becomes functionally obsolete. And I'll give you an example of that as well. So let's start with the fun part first and give you examples of that. Before I do that, let's go through the order of life. So, order of life on a sale. The first thing that we do when we sell a property is we pay the sales expenses. So the title company is going to want a fee. They're going to want a fee to close it as well. There are attorneys that are going to get money out when this happens. There's probably a real estate broker that we've hired to sell the property as well. So all of those sales expenses are going to come out first on the closing statement. The second thing, should there be money left after the sales expenses, and there better be money left after the sales expenses, then the next thing that we pay off is the mortgage on the property. Should there be money left after we pay off the mortgage, and there better be, the very next thing that we do is we pay back all investor capital. All of it. All of that goes back. Before there's anything spread to anybody else in the transaction other than the sales expenses and the mortgage, the investors get all of their capital back. Should there be money after that, and again, there should be money after that, we're going to pay any accumulated preferred returns. And I'm going to leave that alone for just a second and not discuss it right now. We'll go through this in an example of things that can happen with a real estate transaction here in a few, and you'll know what that means by the time that you're done watching our videos. And then only after all of those things have happened, then we distribute based on ownership. Investors get all their capital back, and then they get 50% because the investors own 50% of the LLC this is in. So we wrote this 50% up here very nicely earlier. Each one of these is in its own LLC. Our typical naming convention would be HJH, that's our company. The name of the city, let's go to Columbus, Ohio. The city that the property is located in. And then the number of transactions that we've done in that city. So we've already purchased one in Columbus previously. That was HJH Columbus 1 LLC. So if we purchase there again, it'd be HJH Columbus 2 LLC. It's very important. Each one of our transactions is done in its own individual LLC. You're not going into an investment that we made 4 years ago. You're not going into an investment that we're going to make in 2 years. You're going into an investment in HJH, the name of the city, LLC. And the same thing happens with our bank accounts. All of our bank accounts are separated based upon those LLCs, so they are completely separate, standalone entities for each deal. So let's come back here and give an example of order of life on sale. To my left, you'll note that there's a Comerica Bank that we purchased in Southfield, Michigan. That was HJH Southfield 1, by the way. We purchased that property for $2,133,000, and this is the lowest cap rate deal that I've ever done. We did it at a 9 cap. So my net operating income on that property, when we put it under contract, was $192,000. Comerica had a 5-year lease. So, and we purchased the property for $2,133,000. Yeah, if you will take your calculator, if you're at home, you multiply $2,133,000 by 0.09, which would be a 9 cap, you'll find that that computes $192,000 divided by 0.09 equals $2,133,000. So I argued with the broker on this deal because I don't buy properties at a 9 cap. He goes, Corey, I think that they're going to renew. I think you can renew it while you're under contract. And that's indeed what we did. So they had a 5-year lease, and we reached out to them and said, Comerica Bank, it would make it a lot easier for us to get a loan and to own this property if you had a 10 or a 20-year lease. And if you'll do that, we'll reduce your payments just slightly, but enough to give you some incentive. And over a 10-year period of time, that is the equivalent of about $168,000 that you will save. If you do a 20-year deal, you'll save $700,000, $800,000 if you do it. Which would you prefer? And they said, well, if you close on this property at day of closing, we'll give you a fresh 10-year lease. So the new NOI on that lease was $186,000 because we gave them $500 a month less. But I had a secret that I knew about this, is that the longer a lease is on a piece of commercial real estate, with the better credit tenant, and Comerica has a very good credit rating, the more it's worth and the lower cap rate somebody will pay for it. Coming back to here, on 3/31 of 17, just 6 months later after purchasing the property, a little over 6 months later, we sold that property for $2,777,500. Now, why did we decide to sell? Well, because I had made it worth more than it was going to be worth again in the next 10 years by extending out that lease. So we sold it for $2,777,500. Let's take a look at what that meant for our investors in this deal. When we purchased the property for $2,133,000, we raised $675,000 of investor capital. So we've now sold it for $2,777,500. Well, that's more than $2,133,000, so people are about to be very happy. First thing that we did is we paid some of the sales expenses. In an estimate round way, because I don't have it sitting in front of me here, but that was probably somewhere around $150,000 by the time we paid the brokerage fees, etc. Then we paid off the mortgage that was on the property. That was somewhere around $1.6 million. By this point, it was a little bit less than that. At the end of the day, we had left about $1,125,000 after that was done. So we got our sales expenses out, we've got our mortgage out of there. Now our next thing to do is pay back all the investor capital. So I'm going to pay back all of the investor capital, and that left us with about $550,000 left over. We had no accumulated preferred returns. We'd made our preferred returns the whole time. This deal happened because it was a 9 cap, the lower cap rate. We had a 6% preferred return. So for 6 months, we paid a 6% return on the capital before we closed. Now we're distributing according to ownership. So we've got $550,000 left to distribute. 50% of that amount was $275,000, which went to the investors on the deal. So there was $675,000 worth of capital invested. There was money made for 6 months while we were in the deal, and then the investors got back a chunk of $275,000. All in all, the investors in that deal made just right around 50% on their money in a 6-month period of time. Now I'll stop you here. This is not what we do. This is not what we are looking to do. We try to hit doubles using baseball terms. We consistently try to make doubles all the time. Sometimes when you try to hit a double, you hit it out of the park and have a home run and everybody wins really big. But again, we're in the long game. We're looking at protecting investor capital over a long period of time, not making big jumps in capital. However, if the big amount of capital sits in our face and says, hey, come take me, we're going to do that in that equation and make sure the investors can realize the reward of making investments with HJH Investments. That gives you a good example of what happens when we close on a property and a real life example of something that happened on an acquisition that we did a few years ago.